Hello, my name is Courtney Wood, and I'm doing a presentation on discovery learning. I'd like to first start with a quote by Seymour Papert. It says, "You can't teach people everything they need to know. The best you can do is position them where they can find what they need to know when they need to know it." I really enjoyed this quote because as Christian educators, we're trying our best to train our students to be disciples of Christ and to know where to find the answers, no matter if they're surrounded by people who are Christians or if they're surrounded by the world, to know where they can find the answers and what they can rely on. And I just thought it was very fitting for our educational process. I'd like to give you a brief overview of the discovery learning presentation. We're going to go over the history, description, some pros and cons, an impact on the current educational system, thoughts for Christian educators, and a brief conclusion. Let's start with the history. The idea of discovery learning has appeared repeatedly throughout history by philosophers: Archimedes, Rousseau, Pestalozzi, Dewey. These are all philosophers who had similar ideas. It just might not have been called discovery learning. It wasn't until educationalists and theorists such as Piaget, Papert, and Bruner that it really started to take form as discovery learning and given a name and really outlined. And then Jerome Bruner is credited with introducing the discovery theory in 1961. And he's the one who's he made it popular. So since he made it popular, I wanted to go over a couple more things of what he said and about discovery learning to give more detail behind it. So he was the author of The Process of Education that served as the manifesto for academic curriculum reform. He realized that there was kind of a need for the academic standards. They were kind of lacking. So him and a couple other men, they got together and he wrote this book, but they wrote some curriculum reforms that they thought should be put in place. They didn't necessarily come to light or be enacted as he thought they should have been, but the point is that he saw a need, and so he tried to fix it and fill it. His thought process or goal was that people of any age to begin thinking like scholars. It didn't matter how young a child was or how old a person was, they could think like scholars, and this was his thought. That it didn't matter who you were, you could be taught to think like a scholar. He overcame the previous behaviorist thoughts of students as passive recipients of knowledge. Instead, he tried to show people that students should be active participants of knowledge, of the learning process. He believed that there is no reason to wait until the child is ready before introducing certain topics which would otherwise not be accessible to him. And he said, "We begin with the hypothesis that any subject can be taught effectively in some intellectually honest form to any child at any stage of development. It is a bold hypothesis and an essential one in thinking about the nature of a curriculum. No evidence exists to contradict it. Considerable evidence is being amassed that supports it." I found his thoughts very interesting because it made me think of the current public education systems. They're introducing thoughts to children at a very, very young age in elementary school, lower elementary school, about everything for like the LGBT, whatever, all the, that whole agenda. And ideas that these things are okay, it's okay to want this, it's okay to not, if you feel like you're if you're a girl and you feel like you need to be a boy, that's fine. And they're teaching these to children because people like Bruner thought that it doesn't matter. There's no reason to wait until a child is old enough. But whenever you're teaching things to children at that young age, you're impressing your own opinions on them. You're imprinting on them. And then they'll start believing what you've told them is okay. So it was interesting to me because you can see in our culture and day and age, these things that have come to light, and they're now evident in our culture because of people like Jerome Bruner. Now, just because he had this idea, and just because things in our culture have come to light, and it seems like his advice was taken and things, that doesn't necessarily mean that discovery learning is bad in itself. But remember, as Christian educators, Christians in general, we need to spit out the bones and take in the meat of anything that we are looking at. So I'd like to go in and talk about a description of discovery learning. So these are the pedagogical aims. There's 3 of them. There's to promote the deep learning, like to promote metacognitive skills, and then promote student engagement. We want students to really be involved in the process, promote deep learning, not just surface retention that you're going to retain for the test and then forget it the next day after the test. I know there was a lot of that kind of learning going on whenever I was in school. I would remember it for that test and I'd be done. I couldn't remember it anymore. But it's promoting that deep learning that knowledge is going to stay with you for a long time. And then the metacognitive skills as well. Some characteristics of discovery learning, and that learning is active. The process is the emphasis instead of the end product. Failures encourage the student to continue to search for solutions. You're going to give feedback to allow students to develop deeper understandings, and it satisfies natural human curiosity. And I thought some of these were great because I love that. I love learning, and I love the idea that the learner is actively participating in the learning process. And I also like the fact that failures are encouraging the student to continue to search for solutions, because we aren't perfect. We are going to fail in life, and we need to teach our students to keep searching for answers. If one doesn't work, you got to keep looking. I think of Thomas Edison. He failed, well, was it over 1,000 times before he finally discovered what was the correct filament for a light bulb? But did it stop him every time he failed? No, he kept going to search for the solution. So I just think, it's good to teach students that it's okay to fail, but you got to keep going. You got to keep looking for answers. And it satisfies natural human curiosity because, you think of a young child who's just learning how to walk, learning how to crawl. They want everything. They're in cabinets, they're putting anything they can get a hold of in their mouths, and it's just satisfying that natural human curiosity. And so I like that as well because we are naturally curious. We do want to know answers. So those are all, thought those were great aspects of discovery learning. Now the next thing I want to walk you through is the 5-step or the 5 principles of discovery learning. So really it's a 5-step process. So we have problem solving, we have learner management, integrating and connecting, information analysis and interpretation, and then failure and feedback. Problem solving, it's just literally you're going to solve a problem. The teacher will facilitate the process, then they'll direct it, and they'll help motivate the students, but the learners are the driving force. Then you have the learners. Well, the students are managing the learning. So they work in solos or they work in groups, and each student gets to work at their own pace. The goal behind that is to relieve students from unnecessary stress. After you have the learners, you have the integrating and connecting. Teachers, again, facilitators, they're helping students understand the process of combining things they know with things they're learning, the new knowledge, and the students are encouraged to connect what they're learning in their classroom with things that are going on in the real world. And the goal behind this is for students to stretch beyond their own little world into something beyond what they know, to invent something new. Now, as you're gathering all this information, then you're going to have to analyze it and interpret it. So this is where the teachers are going to help and teach students how to analyze and interpret information, but this goes beyond just memorizing the facts about subjects. There's more to it. It's not just memorizing different dates. It's learning about history, learning about the people, learning about all these things. And there's, again, the emphasis on the process instead of the content. And then failure and feedback. You have to learn how to fail. You have to learn how to have a failure and make a mistake. You're going to be okay. It really teaches students to focus on the findings from the process instead of the end result. What did you learn from this process? Maybe you made a mistake, maybe it failed horribly, but what did you learn from that process of what you did? What are you going to do differently next time? So the instructors provide that feedback. They teach them and help direct students so the next time they're doing an experiment, the next time they're looking for information, they're discovering, then they have a better thought process on how to go about it. Now next we have the pros and the cons. Just some simple thoughts about in favor of discovery learning and against. So the pros, it encourages motivation, active involvement, creativity. adjustable to the learner's pace, promotes autonomy and independence, ensures higher levels of retention, and it's scaffolding techniques to build on the known. So that's a great way to learn, because how do you learn or teach anything? You go from the known to the unknown. So it helps teach students to do that on their own. What do you know? What do you want to know? How are you going to get there? So it just helps build that process. Some cons: there's not a solid framework for discovery learning. It's kind of just, all right, what do you want to learn about today, children? Okay, go learn. And so it's not to that degree specifically, but there's not specific solid framework. So there needs to be more developed. Should not be used as a main instruction method. That is a terrible idea. Students need more guidance than just being set free to go uncover all the answers. They need to have a knowledge basis first and then say, okay, well, now we're going to do projects. What do you want to learn about? Okay, go find more information about that. Instructors must be well prepared, and at a certain level, it rejects the idea that there are significant skills and knowledge learners should need to learn. Learners can do it all on their own. No, they can't. They need a basis, a foundation to build on. And weaker students fall through cracks easier, and it can be overwhelming cognitively. It can be all these questions, you don't know how to answer them. It can overwhelm the student's brain. Now, the impact on the current educational system, it's pretty versatile for every subject. You can use this no matter what kind of class you're teaching. You can use discovery learning. High student involvement, there's high advantages for students with learning disabilities. It makes it easier for them because they can go at their own pace. And teachers are facilitators, which is something different. Then we have thoughts for Christian educators. These are important because discovery learning in and of itself is not a bad thing. But if you're not careful, it can undermine the authority of the teacher, because the learners are in control of the situations. The learners are the ones who are pushing what we learn. You have to be careful because that's undermining your authority. Discovery projects should be careful, and they should only be taking place if students already have a solid factual foundation. What is right? What is true? Set that foundation first, and then allow students to build on it. But they also have to know that everything that they interpret or they see or they collect needs to be developed within the constraints of Scripture. They can't just say whatever they want or whatever the world wants them to say. They need to make sure they're doing it through Scripture. And then the teacher needs to be respected so you can reject or accept anything that they present. Really have to be careful about that. Again, because they might undermine the authority. And then discovery learning can promote a lack of discipline in the classroom because students are more in control of the learning situation. And so it can be hard to discipline students. Now, some concluding thoughts. Our discovery learning was introduced by Jerome Bruner in the 1960s as an educational outlet, something new. Students are active participants in the learning process, with teachers playing the role as facilitator. Feedback from the teacher is key to making discovery learning a success. And Christian educators need to be wary in adopting discovery learning in every aspect of the curriculum. We have to be careful as Christian educators to make sure that we are, again, building that foundation of the Scriptures, teaching our students how to look through the Scriptures, find those answers. After we do that, it's okay to want to go and seek out answers. God has given us natural human curiosity because He wants us to find out more about His creation. He wants us to, but we have to make sure we set up that base first. And then, just food for thought, make sure you're taking the meat and spitting out the bones. Because discovery learning can be a great asset to the classroom. It helps create a new situation and allows students to step outside their comfort zones and really make it an individual process. But, again, just a word of caution, make sure you are still in control of the classroom, make sure you are the authority, and make sure you are teaching them according to the Scriptures what is right and how to seek answers. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation on discovery learning. I had fun presenting it to you, and it's been a great time just learning more about discovery learning in and of itself. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your time. Thank you for listening.